Hello everyone, in this video I'll be explaining the three main electrical states of a neuron: the resting potential, local potential, and action potential, and I'll show you how each one works using my own drawings I made. And obviously it all starts off with a motor neuron, so I did draw one right there, and I'll just label it just so that everyone knows and it's just in your brain while you watch the rest of the video. Where that black dot is called the soma. Outside the soma are those squiggly lines, those are called dendrites. Where the head connects with the body, that is right in between, it is called the axon hillock. The entire body of the neuron is called the axon. The rectangles are called myelin sheaths. The spaces in between are called the nodes of Ranvier. All three electrical states occur throughout a motor neuron, and that's why it's good to know each of the parts. It has to do mainly with the whole entire thing. So the first electrical state we're going to talk about is called the resting membrane potential. So what is resting membrane potential? It actually describes the actual value of the electric potential at the plasma membrane when it is at rest and ready to send a signal down its length. At rest, all the gates are closed, and the state of the membrane is said to be polarized, meaning that the inside is more negative than the outside, about negative 70 millivolts or MV. This happens because sodium ions are mostly outside the cell and potassium ions are mostly inside. In the drawing, the orange represents the sodium, the blue represents the potassium. As you can see, the gates are closed. And because they're closed, the ions stay where they have been pumped and they do not move. The gray circle in the middle is the sodium-potassium pump, and that is completely different from the gates. A neuron uses sodium and potassium pumps to continually make sure that sodium ions exist in a higher concentration in the ICF, or the inside. As you can see here, the pump mainly pushes out sodium ions for every potassium ion it brings in. Because of this, pumps constantly use ATP to maintain the resting membrane potential. Now we're going to be talking about local potential. When a stimulus like a neurotransmitter reaches the neuron, it can cause sodium gates to open, and the diffusion of sodium ions into the ICF, or the inside, occur. Local potential is a small temporary change in voltage that happens near the point of stimulation. Here are some characteristics of local potential. The first one is that it is a strong range change in voltage along the plasma membrane. It is graded, meaning that the magnitude varies depending on the strength of the stimulus. So the more channels that open, the more ions will enter. The third is that it is decremental, meaning that the current becomes weaker the farther it gets from the stimulation. The last one is that it is reversible. When the stimulation stops, the sodium gates close and the memory returns to its resting potential. If the temporary change in voltage is strong enough and reaches a threshold of about negative 55 millivolts, it can actually trigger an action potential. This leads us exactly to the last state, which is action potential. Here's a graph that I drew that shows the membrane potential before, during, and after action potential. So the beginning of the graph, it starts at the resting potential, which is at negative 70 MV. The blue indicates the local potential. As you can see as well, it ends at negative 55 MV. Once the threshold is reached, the sodium gates open and the sodium ions from the ECF diffuse into the ICF. This causes the membrane potential to undergo a rapid depolarization that will cause the value of the ICF to go from negative 5 MV to 0 MV all the way up to 35 positive MV. At 35 MV, this is the peak value of action potential. At 35 MV, the sodium gates close and the potassium gates open. Now the potassium ions in the ICF diffuse out to the ECF. This causes the membrane potential to undergo a rapid repolarization, which is a shift of the voltage back to the negative values. The green represents a recovery period, but then it goes into the red, which is back onto negative 70 MV, the resting. When that is achieved, the potassium gates and the sodium gates all close, and the potassium-sodium pumps are able to return the cations to their original locations, allowing the membrane to recover and to be ready to go at it again.